Hello and welcome to Fast Effect Double Speed Magic the Gathering. Here we have Sam on Blue Red Delver versus Thomas on a Depths build. See just how fast it is. See the spoiler here. We've got Elvish Reclaimer in the build, which, to be honest, I haven't loved previously in Turbo Depths decks. I just feel in the past, the deck was typically needing to win by making a 20/20 on like turn 2, and the Elvish Reclaimer just didn't really fit into that formula. Wicked resilient card and definitely has a lot of uses in Legacy. No real criticism outside of in the particular shell of Turbo Depths. I'm not sure how good it is. Of course, now that we have Urza's Saga, it might be a totally different story, but in my experience when I was playing the deck, overall I would have rather had just more access to additional tutors like Crop Rotation or even something like Into the North, be able to tutor up a Dark Depths or a basic if need be. Elvish Reclaimer can be a beatdown as well. We got a 3/4 body for 1 mana when things are going well, but Lightning Bolt actually containing the situation. Young Pyromancer coming down, and that is going to potentially threaten to be a very legitimate clock. 2 damage right now, but can easily grow. 4, 5, 6 damage per turn, enough to close out the game if need be. Urza's Saga and Mox Diamond, bolstering Thomas's resources. And, an Abrupt Decay main deck. Takes out the Young Pyromancer for no value. Very nice. Storm's definitely going to need some type of board presence. One of the new developments with Blue-Red Delver is, of course, Murktide Regent, a card that can just absolutely close the game out all by itself. Very little support needed. It's so massive. This would be one of the few matchups where he could potentially face down a larger threat. Of course, Merit Lage being a 20/20. And Sam using a Wasteland on Urza's Saga before value can be created. Very interesting. That is such a crucial card in this matchup. Did not seem like he really thought about that very much. I don't know if that means he has another Wasteland available to him, or if he's just that concerned with Urza's Saga and the constructs that it would eventually bring to the table. A little bit of a firefight here as Thoughtseize going after Sam's hand. Brainstorm to protect the goods, and it's just going to be a Lightning Bolt. So Thoughtseizing a Lightning Bolt never really feels amazing. You got to pay 2 life to get the Lightning Bolt out of their hand. I guess it's better than taking 3. Though really the work from Lightning Bolt is clearing the creatures. Things like Vampire Hexmage, of course, as we saw, Elvish Reclaimer can potentially be killed by it, but eventually that won't be the case as he grows with the graveyard. Oh, look at this Murktide Regent. There he is. He's a big old dragon. Right now, just a 7/7. Hexmage, some interesting synergy here. Could possibly remove these counters if need be in order to buy some time. Of course, that's not what you want to be using Vampire Hexmage for, but if it's the difference between being dead and giving yourself a couple of extra turns, it's potentially a consideration. So Thomas, with only 2 cards left in hand, may just need to hope to hit a Dark Depths. Dark Depths alone, or of course something that can go get the Dark Depths, something like a Crop Rotation. Elvish Reclaimer. That could do it right there. Thomas in pretty interesting shape here. Let's see the life total. So he definitely took 7 previously. Oh no. We have a Crop Rotation. That gets Force of Willed. Thomas going for the surprise Merit Lage, but it's okay because he can just get the Merit Lage now while Sam is tapped out. Oh, opts not to. Well, that's very dangerous. That is a I can't think of any reason to do that. He opens himself up to Stifle, Wasteland, Lightning Bolt. It's like everything. Oh, and Lightning Bolt takes it out. Brutal. Thomas had the 2020 available to him there and opted to do it during the attack step, trying to get that extra value of blocking the Murktide. And that was just a total disaster. So using the Elvish Reclaimer, and then before that ability resolves, Sam just Lightning Bolts the Vampire Hexmage. Doesn't matter what you get, that Murktide's going to take you out. This is not a lands deck that's going to have, for example, a Mazavith or something. And that is just a wrap right there. And totally avoidable. Oof, that's a tough one. That is, as the kids say, punished. Definitely instructive, however, while your opponent is tapped out or they get a chance to draw into like Wasteland. That's really the most dangerous card in the matchup. Wasteland, very, very difficult to contend with. The way that state triggers work, there's just not a lot you can do about Wasteland. For example, if you have a Thespian stage or even a Vampire Hexmage, once those counters are removed from a Dark Depths, they can just Wasteland with that state trigger on the stack, and it will not re-trigger until there are no copies of that state trigger on the stack. So if Dark Depths has 0 counters on it, because if you use the Vampire Hexmage, for example, I'm going to let you use your Hexmage, and then while it has 0 counters, I'm going to Wasteland your Dark Depths, and that is going to destroy your Dark Depths. Like, it's not going to re-trigger because it has no counters on it. It's just not how state triggers work. Rather arbitrary. I suppose they could have changed. The rules could be different for Magic. That wouldn't really be that big of a change in terms of the way the rulebook reads, but the effect would be quite large. Kind of like stifling a Dark Depths trigger. That also doesn't work. You can stifle once a Dark Depths has 0 counters on it. A trigger will go on the stack. You can stifle that trigger, just won't matter because after you counter that trigger, it will immediately trigger again as a state trigger. Mox Diamond, Urza's Saga. This is dangerous. We've got a Pithing Needle, which draws a Force of Will. Urza's Saga, a powerful new addition to many archetypes. I don't know how good it's going to end up being in Turbo Depths. Traditional lands, I'm sold. I think Urza's Saga in a traditional land shell, I'm very much on board with. Curious to see if Urza's Saga is going to give the type of flexibility that it does to other decks when it's kind of a glass cannon. Turbo Depths is just so straightforward, but, you know, perhaps with Urza's Saga and Elvish Reclaimer, give it some ability to play a little differently. Ooh, and Choke. That is unpleasant for sure. Urza's Saga ticking up to 3. Thomas can make a construct before gets his free 1 or 0 drop. And it looks like he's opting to do that. Sam with the construct tokens at the ready. We've got a Pithing Needle. We're going to be naming Wasteland, as that's the big threat here versus Dark Depths. Right now, this construct, just a 3/3, but he's going to have a couple of more friends joining the party real soon, and they're all going to get buffed. We've got a Thoughtseize. It's just over. The exponential growth of those constructs is pretty savage. Growing each other. 4 constructs. Like if you have just one construct and no other artifacts, they're 1/1s, 2 up to 3. I mean, they just keep growing. 4 of them ends up being 16 power. 10 of them ends up being 100 power. I mean, it's just gets out of hand real fast. Sam's got a Mishra's Bauble. Getting that graveyard loaded up early. Makes for Delirium for the Dragon Rage Channeler, or at least cards to delve for Murktide Regent. Inquisition of Kozilek. Met with a Brainstorm. It's just going to be Lightning Bolts. And it would be so much better if this was Thoughtseize. Being able to take Murktide Regent would be a lot better. Sam not able to make that Inquisition totally whiff. Oh, but this actually is Thoughtseize. Now we can expect Murktide Regent to go, leaving just Submerge for non-land cards in Sam's hand. Not where Sam wants to be. Ideally, he wants to have a threat on board, plenty of cantrips and interaction, or at the very least, the ability to get a Murktide together. Very interesting how that played out. Inquisition baiting Sam into keeping just high casting cost cards in hand. It would have been typically, if, for example, if Thomas had fired off a Thoughtseize first, you can imagine that Murktide Regent would have landed on top of the deck, able to come down later. But we've got Dragon Rage Channeler. Land creature, instant, artifact. We got a 3/3. Oh, big oof. Big oof. Crop rotation while tapped out. Thomas thinking he wanted to get that 20/20 into play during Sam's end step, but he was tapped out. Now we've got a main phase crop rotation. This one is going to resolve. Thomas going to be able to make a 20/20 here. Sam not going to be able to answer this with Submerge. Oh, no, he passed the turn? He passing the turn here? Oh, talk about punished. He passed the turn. Wasteland does not use the stack to enter the battlefield. There's no chance to respond with this Vampire Hexmage. And now this Wasteland just staring daggers at this Dark Depths. Thomas has to send Hexmage and now another Hexmage. At this point, he's reduced to trying to win the race. As long as Sam fully understands how these triggers work. Sam just throwing a daze away there just for the scry value. Or the surveil, I should say. From Dragon Rage Channeler. That's confusing too. Might be correct. But I tend to doubt it. I feel like it's very likely you can get more value out of that daze by brainstorming it away. Oh, and another Wasteland. Now, a less sophisticated player might respond to the Vampire Hexmage activation with a Wasteland, leaving Dark Depths still having 10 counters on it, which could then allow you to use the other Vampire Hexmage to get rid of the counters. You'd actually want to wait until the counters are off and the state trigger happens. With that state trigger on the stack, that's when you're going to want a Wasteland. So right now, Sam... Does he not have a full graveyard? Oh, and Sam actually just firing Wasteland off prior to any action on Thomas's side, as he has just like triple Wasteland down the stretch there. That was brutal. Thomas probably now recognizing the line that would have led to victory. Yeah, that was very instructive. Tiny little decisions there absolutely being the difference between winning and losing.